I get questions all the time from family, friends, colleagues, coworkers, and even clients. That because of my experience in hip implant litigation, these are folks that say to me, you know, if you had to have a hip replacement, the first question is always, which doctor would you go to? And the second question is, which implant would you have put in you? And this day and age, information is ubiquitous. And if people Google hip implant and hit enter, what they're going to find is ads from lawyers everywhere about all these hips that have failed. And it scares people. And that's the reason that sort of promotes this question. They know that there have been some bad hips out there. So I usually give them a little primer. And actually my partners asked me to make this video. And so it might be helpful for people out there who are facing the situation. They've got a very painful hip. They know it's arthritic. It's been arthritic for a while. And now they're having to make some decisions about who they're going to go see in terms of a doctor. And they're scared because they've heard a lot of bad news out there in the press about hip implants that have failed, recalls, people having to go back and have a bad hip implant taken out of them. So the first thing I tell people when they ask me these two questions is, number one, with regard to the doctor. It is worth your while to do some due diligence and ask some questions. You want to go see a doctor that is fellowship trained in arthroplasty. That means that they went to extra training to learn how from really experienced doctors and qualified doctors how to implant these prosthetic joints, hips and knees basically. There are a lot of doctors out there that are fellowship trained in arthroplasty. Then once you find your fellowship trained doctor, you need to ask them the question, how many hips did you do last year? And I would not allow a doctor to perform a hip replacement, an elective hip replacement on me, if the doctor hadn't done at least 150 hips in the previous year. Doctors that are that busy, it's like anything else. The more you do, the better you get. He'll have a team in place, or she'll have a team in place. They work together, they work quickly, they work efficiently, they do this a lot, they've seen all the complications, they've seen all the problems, their rep is probably a really good rep, and they've really got the program down. So those are the two pieces of advice with regard to the doctor. One, fellowship trained. Two, did at least 150 cases last year. Once the doctor part's out of the way, then it's a very legitimate question for you to ask your doctor, what do you intend to put in me? You can lay aside the fears that you're going to get one of these recall devices put in you, because they don't sell them anymore, number one. And really most of the bad hips that were made in the last 10 years were metal on metal, basically. Metal ball, one-piece metal cup. And that went all the way to the FDA, and the FDA says that's a bad idea. And most doctors would not put one in you today, even if they could find one still on the market. So the question is, what are you going to put in me? And the answer is, there's really only one thing that I would allow to be put in my body if it was me. I would have a one-piece press-fit stem, non-cemented, and I would have a ceramic head with a polyethylene insert into a porous coated titanium shell that has the ability for screw fixation. That's what those holes are in the back. You can actually, once this is in the patient's pelvis, you can actually run a screw into it if you don't think it has good fixation. Why is that? Well, this day and time, the science that's behind this polyethylene product, this is highly cross-linked polyethylene, and the studies that are out in the medical literature now looking at the performance of this over the last 15 years is excellent. It is excellent. Almost no wear whatsoever from this polyethylene. And the ceramic head, its connection, ceramic to titanium, typically these stems are titanium, that has a very, very, very low risk of any kind of corrosion. If this head, as opposed to being ceramic, is actually metal, that's a titanium ceramic, that's good as well. But if you put a metal head on a titanium stem, this is chrome cobalt, this is titanium, these actually work as well and can go into the polyethylene, but this has a risk of corrosion at the connection between the titanium stem and the chrome cobalt neck. So I would not allow a doctor to put a chrome cobalt head in me. I would demand that a ceramic head go in me with a press fit stem, highly cross-linked polyethylene. If you go to your doctor with that written down and say, I demand that you put a ceramic head with a highly cross-linked polyethylene liner in me, you're going to impress your doctor. He's going to know exactly what you're talking about, and that's not something that would be unreasonable to request. There might be some restrictions, insurance restrictions on the difference between the ceramic and the chrome cobalt. Chrome cobalt tends to be cheaper. Ceramic tends to be more expensive, and so some hospitals, some insurance programs won't allow the doctors to substitute a ceramic head in for the chrome cobalt. I would jump up and down and scream and holler before I would let a doctor put a chrome cobalt head in me on a titanium stem. I just wouldn't let it happen. So to sum up, my recommendations for somebody facing this, number one, is find a doctor that's fellowship trained and has done a lot of procedures. Somebody that's just 4 or 5 years out of their training, that doesn't scare me if they're fellowship trained and they've done over 150 in the last year. As a matter of fact, I would probably tend to go with that person rather than somebody that's 35 or 40 years out of their training. That might scare me a little bit because, technology changes over time. Number two, with regard to the implants, I would go one-piece press fit stem, ceramic head, highly cross-linked polyethylene liner, and a porous coated titanium acetabular shell. That's going to give you the best chance of a good, successful recovery. Good doc, good implant. You're good to go for 25, 30 years with that.